This is Brian with ScreeningFiles.com interview. What I'm looking at today is 2020's Extraction, not to be confused with Abduction, both of which sound like a medical procedure and an exercise. In any case, this is an interesting movie. It's odd. Relatively early in the movie, we're introduced to Tyler Rake, played by Chris Hemsworth, and we learn pretty quickly that he has a bit of a death wish. He wants to die, but we don't know why. As the movie progresses, we learn that his wife and son, I believe it was leukemia. I know that somebody died of leukemia. In any case, he has a bit of a death wish, and he accepts this assignment to free this boy who's been kidnapped by a drug lord. The movie has a drug lord kidnapping the son of another drug lord. These are not sympathetic characters, which is a bit of a problem because while Tyler Rake is interesting because Chris Hemsworth, you're not exactly rooting for either of these people. The son seems not a bad person, though very entitled, like any rich kid typically is. And it makes him hard to root for. I mean, you don't want him to die, but I didn't care enough to want him to be saved either. He's part of the problem, frankly, so wasn't too keen on that. And the movie sets up this weird contrast. That contrast is the child soldiers that work for a rival drug lord who are trying to kill Hemsworth, or Tyler Rake. What a terrible name that is. And get the kid back. And it's odd because the movie's not a commentary on child soldiers. At least I don't think it is, because it doesn't do it very well. But I'm not sure what the point of that is and what it's trying to say. It's a little odd, and it's mildly off-putting. The issue is not child soldiers in themselves. It's that the movie uses them as a plot device, a subplot device, sort of, and doesn't really go anywhere with it. There's like no point to that. Tyler Rake being there doesn't help them. It does nothing to their lives other than to have him beat them up on occasion. So that's a little strange. Another really odd thing about this is, I assume it's a writing oversight, but Tyler Rake works for this agency of sorts that accepts assignments for mercenaries, he being a mercenary. So they take the job to free the drug lord's son with no money. Nothing! Not even a penny down! This is the strangest thing to me because the thing is, one of the henchmen of the drug lord whose son was kidnapped hires Tyler Rake, or the agency, and he betrays them. What he does is let Tyler Rake do all the hard work. So Rake risks his life to free the son, and he goes in and starts to kill Rake's people and tries to take the son for himself. Now, as I said, they take no money down for this. Literally, no money down. They kidnap the son, and after the fact, they're asking for money. You can't buy a car without paying something down, typically. The idea that I can hire a mercenary on my word alone, and you're gonna come do the job, and after the fact ask me for money is the insanest idea. I would screw them over because you're opening yourself up to it. It's ridiculous. And the idea that this supposedly sophisticated organization would take no money down and it is the most ludicrous thing. I mean, hell, half, 3/4, something, give me something to work with, and I will go do the job. And let's say, hypothetically speaking, you use this movie's premise, in which case, you screw me over. Okay, well at least I've gotten 3/4 of it, and I'm gonna come after you. But this movie, they employ massive amounts of resources based on somebody's word? It is the dumbest thing, and this makes no sense. And I've read that this movie has been compared to Jason Bourne. That's not accurate at all. Well, maybe in a sense that Jason Bourne has fighting in it. This movie has fighting in it as well. It's a lot more gorier than Jason Bourne, to be sure. But if you're going to describe this movie in an elevator pitch, you'd probably describe it as Escape from New York combined with The Courtship of Eddie's Father. Look it up, it's a touching show. Reason being, Tyler Rake, I mentioned earlier, had the death of his wife and son. I think it was a boy. It could have been a girl. It's a very ambiguous looking child. In any case, this kid helps him to reach a kind of catharsis about that. He's been haunted by it the entire movie, and this kid helps to bring him out. But as I said, this is Escape from New York. This entire movie is Escape from New York. Tyler Rake is Snake Plissken, except it doesn't end as well for Tyler Rake, or does it? The ending is ludicrous. It's ridiculous. So that's not to say Extraction isn't an enjoyable movie, because it is. Chris Hemsworth is such a presence on screen. Oh, by the way, and speaking of Chris Hemsworth, I want to mention that as depicted in most movies, he's a remarkably attractive man. They manage, through tattoos, to make him look not attractive. It's actually a feat in and of itself. Another interesting thing about Extraction is that it's based on a graphic novel. Now, the graphic novel takes place in South America, and instead of a boy, it's a girl. Now, the movie moves the action to India and replaces a girl with a boy. I'm not sure why it does this. It could have been made just as easily with that model as this one. And in fact, I would argue that the idea of Indian drug lords, well, I mean, I'm sure it's possible, like anything else. I've never heard of it. While conversely, South American drug lords, that I've heard of. That's pretty common. Though, that's probably why they didn't use that angle, because you hear about it so often, and it's almost a cliche. So there's that. Though on the whole, oh, I forgot to mention also, gun kata, or gun fu. There is a lot of close quarter shooting in this movie. And I've held a gun, but I've never shot a gun. I'm kind of wondering if that's an ideal way to shoot people. They're using relatively powerful guns, like .45, automatics, and so on. And they're literally getting within inches of a person before shooting them, and shooting by people's heads and stuff. Would this not affect your hearing? I mean, again, I'm not a gun person. I've never shot a gun before. But it seems to me that to shoot a person literally this far from you would have a bad effect not only on them, but you? I don't know, but it doesn't seem to make sense to me. It's gun kata, remember from Equilibrium, good movie by the way if you haven't seen it, really awesome. It's very gun kata-ish, but it plays kind of silly. And again, I keep repeating, I am not a gun person. Maybe there's a logic to this, but it doesn't feel logical. The movie is so reality-based that the proximity of the gun use is kind of, it feels wrong. Now that may be because it's not something you traditionally see, but I get the feeling it's because it's not good. And people who shoot people deliberately don't shoot them when they're this far away from them, because that's potentially problematic. I don't know. If you have some opinions on this, please let me know in the comments, because I'm genuinely curious as to why they do that or why they don't do it. I just don't know. It just looks funky to me. And there's also some scenes that are clearly computer assisted. Kind of like in Children of Men, in fact. And the scene I'm referring to is when Tyler is driving, the kids in the other seat, and they're maneuvering through streets of India. Now, there are a lot of people in the street in India, it seems. And to be driving a car at those speeds with all those people is inevitably going to result in someone getting hit by a car. Inevitably. But it doesn't happen in this scene. And the reason I think it doesn't is because it looks, visually, it looks slightly off. It looks very much like this is something that's been done on computer. It doesn't look bad, but again, it's slightly out of sync. Something is not right with it, and it looks really funky. And speaking of cars, people are hit by cars a lot in this movie. Tyler Rake, some of his opponents, they're getting slammed by cars. Now, Rake is beat up a lot in this movie, don't get me wrong, but my thing is, bones break, tendons tear. You're getting hit by cars enough times, something is not going to work out for you. Now, I get it, it's a movie, but at some point, it's starting to push the laws of plausibility a little bit. I mean, you might get, and this movie relies on the idea of luck a lot, in the sense that there's a certain visceralness, a certain realness to the way it proceeds. But at the same time, Tyler Rake literally kills a small army in this movie. And I am not exaggerating that. Between the police and military, he literally kills enough people to make a small army. And that's problematic, if only because I think the saying goes, the sun shines on a dog's ass every once in a while. By which I mean, someone would have hit him. Someone would have struck him some way, shape, or form. You don't get that lucky. The idea that he's having these knife fights, he's having these gun fights, he's being hit by cars, and that's not to say he's not beat up. He takes quite a beating in this movie. But the thing is, considering what he's doing, he got off really well. This type of thing is not unusual in these type of movies, but it's so much more blatant here because so much force is aligned against Tyler. The idea that he can wander through this movie, no matter how skilled, his level of skill is almost irrelevant when they learn who he is. I can understand prior to being identified that he can move swiftly and silently and do all this stuff. People don't know who they're looking for. There's a logic. But the problem is, once he is identified, how is he able to do this? He should have been very much dead. It's ridiculous how much shooting is done at this man, and no one manages to hit him. The movie compensates somewhat by having him take a bit of a beating, but it's still not making any sense. That being said, Extraction is a pretty enjoyable watch. Chris Hemsworth is always game. It takes you to interesting locales, and there's plenty of action, more action you probably want. It has its issues, but as I said, it's a pretty enjoyable watch. This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review. Peace. And if you have any answers about those gun questions, please let me know down below.